Wow. Okay, cleanse there. Wow. Wow. Okay. Should I start? I can't hear.
As you like, Michelle. You know, there's a few people sort of trickling in, but I think you could start as you're ready.
Okay. I'll see how many. Okay. It's like when we're all in the hall together and you start hearing everybody, the sound of people's feet touching the floor, and then it kind of gets less and less, and then it's quiet. In this situation, I'm looking at, well, there's 55. Maybe there's a few more trickling in, but I think I'll start. I just want to say I really appreciate that we're doing this together. It just like that, just that basic getting to see you all like right now. I'd like just to ask you all to make sure that you receive the goodness of us all practicing together. And I'm amazed at the technology that we can do it, that we can actually do this in the midst of the lockdown. So I want to thank Jesse for making this possible in terms of actually making it set up, and really just getting right now to just go through and see you all. Just make sure you do that, because it's so powerful to get to see everybody. Yesterday, I mentioned the phrase, may we be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. And something that I think is very important to remember is that as we're born into this world of this vast range of pleasure, pain, joy, and sorrow, sometimes we hear the emphasis on the mind or the heart opening, the body opening, the heart opening, the mind opening. But we really also have to remember that opening to this kind of staggering, really, range of joy and sorrow requires that also we get strengthened, we get strong to be able to be with it. And I feel that in the last few months, I can't tell you how many people have thanked us for their practice. Just how unimaginable it would be to not have it. The strength. So rather than having to shut down in the last few months or lock down inwardly, I think a lot of us have actually amped up our spiritual practice so that we can be with how things are. So that, in other words, the spiritual journey is about opening and strengthening, opening and strengthening.
Michele, would you just turn your microphone towards your mouth a little
Oh,
bit more.
yeah. This is a new headset, by the way, everybody. So can you hear me now? Better?
Just a little. Yeah, let's try that. Maybe you can bend it toward you a little. Just want to make sure folks can hear. Okay.
Can you hear me better now? Yeah? Is that better? Okay. There's a shrub in Hawaii called crown flower, and it has beautiful light green leaves and a beautiful purple flower that often people make beautiful leis with. And I've always wanted to grow one. And in my time here, I've planted a few, but it's a favorite plant of the monarch butterfly. So the monarch butterfly caterpillars eat the leaves. And I've never been able to plant one without a monarch butterfly caterpillar starting to eat the leaves. And so it will eat all the leaves, and it will die because it doesn't even have enough leaves to eat. And then the plant dies. And because of the pandemic, I've gotten the opportunity to actually not be traveling and to actually kind of monitor my new crown flower plant. So actually, there are some crown flower plants down the road that I can bring the baby caterpillars to if there's not enough leaves, which has happened. And now there is a amazing thing I've never seen before. So this caterpillar, I've been watching the last, I don't know exactly how long now, a few weeks. In 24 hours, it made a cocoon, like a perfect cocoon. I don't know how many of you know that, but it's not like they make a cocoon over like a week. They like suddenly this caterpillar hung upside down one night, and then the next morning there was the most beautiful cocoon. And it already had the gold beads on it. It's not turquoise, it's green, there's not the blue in it yet. But I felt like it was such an incredible thing for us all to understand as a metaphor that, wow, look what happened. We all just went on retreat. We all just went into the cocoon for 20, within a very short period of time. And I'm going to use the example of the metamorphosis of the caterpillar to cocoon to butterfly in a few different ways. I think that, but the most important thing, beginning the talk is just to remind us all that a cocoon isn't a waste of time. And it's not like there's nothing happening inside it. Just because we can't see what's happening inside that cocoon, what is happening is the most important part of the transformation, in that there's this deep rest needed. So there's this caterpillar, right? It's born and it eats and it eats and it eats and it eats. It never stops eating. And that's kind of the effort that we put into our practice, right? But if you remember your first retreat, it was all about the caterpillar. Who knows if the cocoon ever even happened, but it's like this kind of effort it takes to get going. And then the rest, this magnificent rest. But why? Why do we need this rest and time of not doing? Well, it's like what's actually happening in the cocoon is that the wings are developing, and they have to develop to the point where they're strong enough to fly. And we often want to open up the cocoon and get going flying before the wings are strong enough. And so I know I can sometimes mix metaphors, but this is very important, this like opening and strengthening. The wings strong enough to take flight can be a whole country changing, or a whole world changing, or an individual changing. It's this that it takes this enormous timing and the conditions right. Like today, the winds are so strong. The trade winds are so strong. And I went out to check the cocoon and it's just blowing around, but it's staying there. It's amazing, just amazing. And I think sometimes the second, third day of a retreat, we can feel like sometimes we're getting blown around. Maybe that hasn't happened. But to trust that wherever we are, that often the hindrances start to come up the first few days of retreat. And sometimes when we're at home, we don't even really recognize them. And to remember that in Vipassana practice, we're actually meant to connect our attention with whatever's appearing, but also to see that when we actually connect, we tend to want to control. And that we're meant to see that rather than thinking, okay, sleepiness happened again, and we think something's wrong or that it shouldn't be there, and there's that resistance. We might not remember, oh yeah, this is just like, it's not the experience that's happening that matters in this practice. It's how we're relating to it. So when the practice is effortless, when it's like we feel like the butterfly and we just say, oh, sleepiness, and we totally accept it, that's great. But it could be 3 hours later, we're back to the caterpillar, and we might be just like really struggling along, just eating, eating. And we forget, that it's okay. A great teacher, Sri Nisargadatta, said that we make effort until effortlessness asserts itself. And I love that because it has a very different kind of languaging than we're used to. It's like that effortlessness asserts itself, meaning that there's a kind of grace to it. It just comes in, but it just doesn't come in, really. I mean, it might be that after 30 years of practice, it comes in. Or maybe it comes in after 5 days of feeling like we're in the cocoon and nothing's happening. So when we think nothing's happening, try to remember that something's happening. And often it's just that this kind of deep inner rest is required to have enough energy for the effortlessness to assert itself. And I find on self-retreat, I often don't realize that I'm getting quiet because there's no feedback system about it really, other than my own reactivity to something. Like my neighbor, he likes to do weed whacking. It seems like it's on my schedule of sitting rather than any kind of like understanding what my needs are, and it's like even in the years of being where I live, I'll try to do my sitting schedule so that it's not when he's weed whacking, but he just seems to tune into when I'm sitting and weed whack. And in Hawaii, the windows are open and you hear this and it's really funny. It's almost like every time I go on retreat, I'm like, okay, let's get ready for the weed whacker happening at these different times than he usually does it. This might not be that great an example for wherever you are, but it can be internal. It can be restlessness. It can be a feeling that the energy falls, and it's like tempting to even clean the house. It's like when you're on self-retreat again, I find that I notice so many things about inside my house and around my house that need fixing or, doing something with. And when I'm tired or things aren't going right, there's that added temptation that we don't necessarily have at a retreat center to fix it or to clean it. Maybe your environment is perfect inside and outside, and you won't have that temptation, but maybe you'll want to put the dishes away in the cupboards, like at a time that you need to be walking, right? Like it's just, there'll be these pulls at home that can be different. And just to, sometimes it's important to keep to a schedule. And other times I would say I give myself a little slack when I'm on self-retreat, and I might do a little reading, not on schedule, but it feels like it's something that will balance me. So I'm using the butterfly as an example of sixth sense door moment-to-moment meditation practice. It's not a perfect metaphor, but sometimes it'll feel like the caterpillar will be kind of like that effort to kind of come back and be more anchored with one object. And the opposite of that will be like totally letting go of anchoring and just letting the attention, it's like the attention follows the moment to moment change. And there's a wide range of people at this retreat and experience, but just for now, I think there can tend to be a way in kind of recent history and Western meditation practice to value like a kind of effortless sixth sense door awareness practice, and think of anchoring as kind of like lesser or baby steps, you know, something you graduate from rather than skillful means. And I, again, when I've done self-retreats, I find that there are times when, it's often when I'm in the hallway and doing walking, but I'll feel very pulled into a very quiet, microscopic attention with the walking. And it's really helpful and useful. Or like when I'm sitting and I'll just be with the breath for a while. Maybe more than I have been on retreats, but then other times I'll need to be outside walking, maybe in my driveway or in the yard, and I won't be able to do anything but just knowing I'm walking. Like a complete change to just going back and forth knowing I'm walking. Or some of you know the Tankulu style of walking, where I just will walk one pace back and forth and just be aware of seeing, and then one pace back and forth and be aware of hearing, one pace back and forth and be aware of the physical sensations within the legs moving, and then one pace back and forth of the bottom of the feet touching the earth. And then I've added, that's the Tankulu method, though I've added knowing walking as a fifth one. So I usually do 5. And if I'm needing to switch it, I might switch it just in one pace. As I get quieter, I might do 4 paces hearing, 4 paces legs moving. And I find that really helps. There might be times when I really just need to go for a walk, for example. And can you hear okay?
I won't interrupt. I'm not going to
No,
interrupt
it's
again,
okay.
but I do want to try. Can you, it looks like the microphone is pointing towards away from you. And can you just try to point it toward your mouth a little? I'm just concerned people aren't quite getting.
Okay, is that better?
Maybe.
Better? Worse?
I think it's picking up a lot of background noise. That's okay. I think we'll, yeah. Sorry.
I could switch to the other headset.
I think it was worse.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm out in my neighborhood, and I've really got my neighbors trained to, some of my neighbors actually look at me and they actually go like this, and they say, "Are you in silence?" You know, they're really, shifted from me being a very eccentric neighbor to, especially in the pandemic, they're kind of, some of them are copying me, and they use some of the places I walk, and then some of them are silent. And it's been very wonderful to see the shift in my neighbors. So there's one spot I walk, which I don't do slow walking, but I go up and down this little hill. It's not super steep, but it's got an angle to it. So I'm figuring I'm getting a little exercise. Not really compared to like what most people probably do, but I go up and down this kind of little bit of a hill. And I just go back and forth like it's a walking practice, but it's longer. And it's, if you're feeling restless or like you need to kind of get out, if you have a place anywhere near where you live that you can do that and people won't think you're too weird, it's great. And actually what's so interesting is a lot of my neighbors do it. They might not be doing what I'm doing, but they go up and down that hill now. And it's really fun to see the shift again in people enjoying that little spot. It's like it, everywhere is a sacred space. And when we're sitting at home, there are many places that we start to see, even if you do a long self-retreat, you'll eventually go outside to do shopping for food, for example, and the grocery store becomes a sacred space. Or if you have to drive to the grocery store, the gas station becomes a sacred place. And so we don't have to start having this division between on retreat and off retreat so distinctly that we do if we haven't done self-retreats at home. And I want to go into that a little bit more because the last self-retreat I just did, that some of you have heard already, another session, that there were so many interruptions of my self-retreat that I started suffering around, like, but I want to be on this retreat silently. And there kept being interruptions to the point where I was like on retreat, off retreat, on retreat, off retreat, until finally I just had to let it go. And so if you have a situation at home where you can't protect it as well, like yesterday, remember how the car drove up when I was speaking? It was the census. It was the census people, and who knows if somebody's going to come and knock on your door or come through. But it's just, again, to know that you do the best you can in whatever circumstance you're in, and then to realize that there'll be times where you'll have that feeling, oh, I wish I had more protection. I wish somebody was cooking for me on my retreat, for example. It could be anything, but that sense of coming back to not making that distinction. It's just life revealing itself moment by moment. Mostly at the beginning of a retreat, of course, we're not so much always anchoring, or not so much going with the sixth sense or awareness, but we're kind of coming back and doing a little anchoring, letting go, doing a little anchoring, letting go. And I have to say that mostly try to trust how your practice is going with that. In the next few days, if you're struggling with what to do, go right for now where it's a little easier for you. So if anchoring is easier for you, anchor. And if just letting the anchor go is easier for you, let it go. If you're confused or struggling, try not to make a big struggle with it. there'll be an emphasis of the attention shifting more to non-conceptual and concurrent. Are you hearing okay? Right?
Okay, Michele, just can you try to really just bend the microphone so it's pointing toward your face?
It looks like it's at my face.
No, the tip of the microphone pointing toward you. So turn it just a harder. There you go. Yeah, talking. There, bite it. There you go.
Oh.
And just think hard. Try that exactly like that. Let's see.
So it's touching. It's touching.
Hey.
It's touching my lip.
It doesn't have to touch, but it needs to be pointed at your. There you go. You're good.
Okay. I eat microphones. Okay, is that good? Okay. Okay. Whoa, it's very close. Okay. Intimacy with the microphone. So, in terms of conceptual, non-conceptual attention, there's a very short sentence that a great poet, W.S. Merwin, said. Having learned its name, I look at the flower again. So this is a developmental stage for human beings. When we're a baby, we don't know the name of the flower. We don't know the name of a chair. We don't know the name of a tree, right? It's like, and then we shift to learning the concepts. We learn the names. But in meditation practice, we're shifting to knowing it's a flower, but then looking at it again without the name, right? And so that if you're forgetting this piece where when we're bringing our attention to something, anything, whether it's aversion or the breath or a sound or boredom, whatever it is we're bringing, connecting the attention, recognizing what's happening, the idea is that you connect and try to sustain the attention non-conceptually with the experience. So whether it's lifting your leg or touching the ground or touching your fork or chopstick, anything that you connect the attention with, and then sustain the attention through it, of course the concept will come, right? Of course the word foot or the word tree or the word wind will come. But it's like then you bring the attention back to the concurrent non-conceptual movement of whatever's happening. And I would say in these next few days to try to have some patience with this process, because if you've been busy and not so protected, that shift can be hard. And it takes patience to just do the best we can and start again. And do the best we can and start again. And do the best we can and start again. And to definitely go where it's easier. And that's the idea of an anchor. It's like for me, sound was always my first place that I would practice non-conceptual concurrent awareness because it was easy. And then I could shift to the breath, or I could shift to walking, or I could shift to, you know how hard it is to do non-conceptual concurrent awareness with aversion, right? All the, like the blaming and the being right comes in, all the concept comes in, but to be able to go, oh, anger, and come back to the physical sensations that are happening in our body, to have space with the thoughts that are coming and going, and to see it more like to relate to the experience of aversion, more like a weather front coming and going. Now, we can sustain that with much more interest and energy if we've been practicing that with our legs moving, or the sound of the wind or the breath. It's like we learn to practice non-conceptual concurrent awareness with the easier things like body sensations and sound. And to remember, it's much harder to do that with loneliness or attachment or rage or sadness or whatever, what all the emotional or boredom. To have that kind of interest in the non-conceptual concurrent experience. And of course, this is also why we anchor. It's why we, no matter what happens, those winds that are buffeting, that cocoon is connected to something that is stationary. It is there. The anchor is meant to be something we can come back to, that is more neutral, to calm the attention and to get strong enough again to shift to moment awareness when we can, or from something painful like a physical sensation or an emotional or mental pattern. It's like, remember that anchoring is good. It's strengthening. It's not like some far off baby step that you're not supposed to need. This morning I was wanting to just remind us all that when we start a sitting or a walking, if it is hard to be connected with what is, that bare attention, that sometimes starting with a Brahma Vihara that is the easiest for us is really helpful, because it helps us connect. And sometimes we'll forget to bring in that tool. So for example, for me this morning, I felt not quite focused and not quite able to be there with the hearing, seeing, and I just shifted to compassion. And for half the walk, I was doing compassion practice, and that is one of the easiest. It is the easiest Brahma Vihara for me to do. But after like 10 or 15 minutes of practicing compassion, I felt really this deep contentment, connected. It's just, it's my Brahma Vihara of choice. So I just want to say that for some people that might be mudita, not karuna, compassion, but mudita, empathetic joy. It could be that connecting with pleasure and beauty and appreciation of the beauty, gratitude, or for blessings, appreciating any blessings we have. Just to be able to do this retreat is such a blessing. And just it can be, I appreciate the joy in my life, not caring about pain, and it's could be that we just, as Steve says, you call in the metta and call in kindness. And it doesn't mean that we have to repeat a lot of phrases. It can be just we abide in kindness as we're walking, or abide in karuna, compassion, or abide in mudita, appreciation. And for some people, of course, the last one, upekkha, equanimity, is the easiest. So if it's the easiest for you, just remember in the course of a day, sitting and walking, that bringing it in for 10 or 15 minutes or a whole session, just finding that deep place of unconditional acceptance without conditions. I often just make a soft mental note once in a while, without condition, without condition, without condition. And of course, with everything I've been saying, the idea is that we receive without conditions, or we receive the kindness before we try to shift to abiding, or we receive the textures and vibrations of sound. We receive the textures and vibrations of the movement of the breath. We receive the textures and vibrations of loneliness. We're shifting into that deeper receptive awareness that can then shift into the abiding awareness. And if there are times when that effortlessness asserts itself and we really are out of the cocoon into the butterfly, we really see so deeply the fleetingness of existence, the fleetingness of life at moment to moment, change, the impermanence. We might shift into that deeper understanding of the unreliability of experience and the uncontrollability, the anatta of experience. And we can shift to that wordless immersion, just and it's like a serene immersion in fleetingness or uncontrollability. And often we appreciate the Buddha's teaching at these times of appamada, the carefulness we bring to each moment, rather than heedlessness, the carefulness we might bring to eating one bite of food, or the carefulness we might bring to hearing one sound, or just the extraordinary moments when we can really receive a breath, like feel that gratitude for a breath. Anybody that has had any closeness to somebody with COVID-19 when they can't breathe, there's nothing like having a breath that you can take without that much fear. And we take so much for granted, and having this space to slow down and go through all the difficulty to shift into this really deep insight into how things are. Last year, before we all headed to Burma to teach a retreat there, we went out to teach a Sunday sitting on the land in the north of the Big Island. And it was so windy that I had to keep weighing down my papers with a big stone while I was giving the talk. And then at the end of the talk, I have a little basket that I put my papers in. And so I put the papers in. It's kind of a big basket. I put the papers in, and then I took my glasses off, my new glasses that I got, my new expensive glasses that I got, and put them on top of my papers, and the rock was there, and all was good. And then it ended, the silence ended, and some yogi brought this big bunch of avocados, not ripe avocados, very hard avocados, and they dumped them in the basket and broke my glasses, my new expensive glasses. And then I went home and I had no other glasses, and I had an appointment at the doctor the next day, and I couldn't see what time my appointment was, and I didn't go to the appointment on time. And it was just like a really great, it's like an example of like how out of control life can seem. Like it was just this one little thing, it was like windy, and then it was another thing. It's like I don't usually put my glasses there. And some of it, I think, is just an example of how hard it is to get old in and of itself. That it's just harder to keep it all together. But it's just all through that series, I could either have gotten really upset at myself or the weather or the person or whatever, but it was funny. it was actually funny. I mean, when they dropped all those avocados on my glasses, it was like, wow, that's like really, when it's so bad, it's funny. It's just like, wow. And then when I got to my doctor appointment at the wrong time, it's just like, wow, I'm really sorry. But, it's like, what are you going to do? But it's just to remember that when you're on self-retreat, because sometimes I find I might do things that I wouldn't normally do. Like I might burn something I'm cooking that just that when you're a yogi, you might just not be moving in the same speed or like do something. Try to have that. It's like an apamata, a carefulness with humor, a carefulness with humor, carefulness with humor. I find that great saying that Lady Grady said that, you know, when it's sort of that thing, it's not funny anymore, right? You lose your sense of humor when it's not funny anymore. It's like, I know when I don't have a sense of humor, it's better to go into the cocoon or to take a big walk or, just change the channel. That's what I'm saying, and that if you are trying this real sweet, slow, careful way of practicing and things are not going your way, take a break. Sometimes I do something, I call it useless gazing. Useless gazing is when it's time for a break, but you don't want to go far away, you want to stay at home. And I make a cup of tea because I like tea. Now, it could be that you have some juice or some water, but whatever it is, I take my little cup of tea. And if it's nice out, even if it's dark, I might go out and look at the stars and just drink my tea slowly. And I don't try to pay attention to anything at all specifically. Just open up the awareness and just sit there. I could sit, useless gazing can happen for an hour. And remember, that's like going in the cocoon where we have this whole ethic that if it doesn't look a certain way, you're not practicing or wasting your time. But on self-retreat, you need to bring these things in, I assure you, as a way to balance. And you are doing something, even when you're not doing something. When we really understand the fleetingness of our moment-to-moment experience, and we see that there's nothing to hold on to, it's going that fast, that there's often like this deep surrender. Oh. There's often this deep surrender and a shift to this understanding of contentment and serenity. It's like this unconditional acceptance of that there is nothing to hold on to. I like to, I say to myself often, all is nigh. But there's such a sweet sense that everything is okay the way it is. That deep, unconditional acceptance. And you don't have to wait like 5 days for that or 9 days for that. It's just the conditions will come together. It could be you're eating, it could be you're about to go to sleep, or walking. But to remember that that's possible, that very deep sense of well-being is possible for all of us, and that ultimately is what's so strengthening. So do you have any questions?
You see, that's K.
Hi. Can you hear me?
There you are. Okay.
Thank you. I not struggling, but I being feeling a lot of pain and also just uncontrollability of things. And um, I'm I guess I'm still trying to intellectually understand how uncontrollably it is, but when it's internal harm, I can wish myself safety and protection. Um, Even with external harm from greed and hatred and delusion, to some extent, I can wish there's like safe and safety and protection time to time. Um, and it just, when it's so, and also mortality of it, just because of the COVID, I think a lot of death has been in the mind. And you taught before happy side out, like breathing in, everybody I love will die, and breathing out, so will I die. And I've been practicing it a lot, and that is very scary and also helpful. And at the same time, when that death comes from external greed, hatred, and delusion, I just don't know how to like hold that. And because of what's going on right now, it just connects so not even deeply, it just like connects, it latched on so tightly. and and when that happens, I can realize the pain of it, and I can bring up some compassion towards myself, and that goes away. And it just being like the wave of like this pain and letting go, and pain and letting go. And when the concentration goes away, and when concepts comes up, just blaming and just wondering. And um, yeah, that's been a lot of experience. I mean, not just 2 days, but just for, I think, almost a month. That's being the experience. Um, yeah. Um,
So it sounds like sometimes, say the fear comes up, that sometimes you can connect with that with metta or compassion, or if you do the practice of the happy sayadaw, there's times when there is a connection and it's okay, but there are other times when it isn't, and it feels like overwhelming. Am I hearing that right?
yeah.
Okay. And then I actually think of course, it's easier when one's protected by the mindfulness or the metta, right? I mean, it's easier, and when we're not, we're kind of, it's like we've fallen back into conditioning. That makes sense, right? So say, for me, conditioning, my conditioning is that usually I'm to blame. I'm to blame for any pain, and it's all my fault. And the self-hatred attack can get really intense. Um, that's it took me a long time to unravel that, is understanding that that's actually how I try to protect myself. But it's so hard to see when I'm doing it, but I've done it so many, many times that when a self-hatred attack starts, I'm usually able to go, uh-oh. At least, there's a stage of like, uh-oh, I'm about to slaughter myself. And then, oh, I do this. Really, I just walk myself through it. I do this as a protection, that self-hatred's a protection. And then I ask myself, I really have to say, I've had to practice that. I ask myself, like, oh, what is this protection? How could this possibly be a protection, right? It makes no sense. And then I'm sometimes, not always, able to drop into just this pure vulnerability, that you never know what's going to happen. And that is really dukkha, but it's like how I was raised is that that's our fault. Dukkha is our fault. And the preemptive strike is to just assume the worst and that it's all our fault. And that if I hate myself enough, I won't get attacked. I don't, that there might be a little variation on the thing, but ultimately it's like if you hate yourself enough, you're going to prevent an attack of some sort, and or something awful happening. Unraveling that is one of my karmic knots this lifetime. So actually, I'm actually really good at like talking about it because I've had so much practice with it, and I must say that compared to even 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I'm getting better with it because I recognize it as a defense. I recognize it as conditioning, and I see how much harm I cause myself. And if I can't get out of it and it's going on too long, I try to do things to change the channel. I don't stay in it. And this is something that I think we all have to see. Like, it might not be self-hatred. It could be a physical pain, that is just defeating you and wearing you down. It's really the aversion to it that wears us down. But what it could be loneliness. It's something that's usually very painful, and the defense with it actually hurts more. But it's starting to get that, like, I learned that defense. And if I don't remind myself I learned it, I actually am merciless with it. Take no prisoners, merciless, really, really cruel to myself. And it's like I walk myself through it. I have a little game I play that if I can't do that, I have a game where I call it hiding from the hindrances. And hiding from the hindrances means, you run for the hills, and I jump under the covers in the bed, and I have my stuffed animals. And it's like we all have a little party. That can work sometimes, and it's really fun, and it changes the channel, right? Now, if that doesn't work, I might, go for a bike ride or work in the garden. Self-retreat's harder. I have a whole series of little fairy tales that for me are really helpful. I'm not saying they'll be helpful for everybody. It's like you have to find what snaps you out of it enough to it's not to get rid of it. The intention is not to get rid of it. A karmic knot is something that you learn everything from this lifetime. And you learn actually eventually to be grateful for them. My karmic knot has taught me everything about anatta, liberation. Has taught me everything about the little personal me. Needs so much compassion and metta, and that the wisdom, that little part of me wants to be fully enlightened so much, but needs a lot of metta in the process, and a lot of the changing of the channels when I need it. Anything you need to do to change the channel at a certain point breaks the pattern as well. So liberation, mindfulness, metta, all the tools we have are big, but also then moving away from it and getting space from it is also wise. Everything I know about gentleness has come from this pattern.
It's just
Yeah, but
it's
yeah, but
just so hard when
I know.
everything, yeah, everything is hard. It's just so hard when it's racial stuff right now. It's just like everything is reminded me of like a little, just walking outside reminds me of how scared I am to be on this land. It reminds me of, and little glimpse of news of anything that's just, it's so scary that it's just so scary of this 400 years, how that domino effect is still going on and that's still falling down.
It's all I can say is that I'm so sorry, and it's terrifying. Like I can't even say how I feel about what you're saying. It's horrible. There's no excuse for it. It's horrible. It just makes me want to cry. I just feel so bad. Yeah, and it's like I do have another technique that probably isn't good for everybody to hear. But, there's another side to that terror, which is rage. And, you know, anybody who's been really abused knows those two sides of terror and rage. And my rage side, I just machine gun down everybody in my mind if I'm that mad. You know, like it helps me get out of the terror, which is just kill everybody. Now, that might sound extreme if you don't have that kind of situation, but you're living with it, and it can help diffuse it. Whatever whatever you need to diffuse it, even if it's call somebody and say, I am terrified to go outside, and it's legitimate, it's real. And I think that whenever we feel the the disconnect from the experience, we're not protected. And what I'm saying is that any way you can get yourself connected with it, you'll be feel protected. But if you can't, that's totally okay, and you do whatever you need to do to feel protected while you're disconnected from it. But you know, push comes to shove, can't do it, call someone. Kindness. And again, I'm so sorry it's this bad. So maybe we just spend the last few minutes doing some loving kindness, compassion. As we did yesterday, taking a few breaths, deeper breaths. And perhaps we can tune into all of us being together right now, learning how to feel safe and protected by connecting with whatever's happening. And really calling in that affectionate awareness that brings whatever is happening into focus, that brings the safety, the kindness, the affection. Maybe let the attention go out to around your body, the space around your body. However it is you can receive kindness, care, tenderness. It can be just touching your heart center, how whatever's there, numbness, boredom, terror, happiness, quiet. Just touching it, receiving the touch. Loving, caring about whatever is appearing. It's okay to be terrified. It's okay to be disconnected. It's okay to be calm. Whatever's there. Really being able to say to oneself, I care about myself just as I am. May I be peaceful with whatever is happening. And feeling that care and connection for all, everybody, for the retreat. Receiving the goodness of all of us wanting to be free from this inner and outer harm, wishing that these teachings are about wanting everybody to be free of it, free of this harm. Just stop the harm. And to hold, if you can, it's a big jump, but just the whole planet. It's our beautiful home, this planet. Green, blue. Really seeing if you can care about all of us struggling to be free and kind. May we be kind-hearted. May we be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May we experience the goodness of taking care of ourselves, the goodness of sitting here with each other, wishing each other well, and all of the beings everywhere. Really leaning into the Brahma Viharas. peace, care, joy, unconditional acceptance. And we're going to have, it's time for walking for anybody who can stay up, depending on your time zone. And then it's so nice to do the metta chant together and then sit together. So please come join us if you can.